Hello there, Pop Geeks Universe. We are excited to be back with you talking about the world of independent film and especially to have a returning guest, if you will, someone who we've spoken to years back and returning to the world of cinema with another exciting adventure. Vincent J. Roth is here to tell us all about Surge of Power, Where There's Smoke, the latest in his ongoing superhero series. Vince, how are you?
I'm doing great, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to talk to you again. I spoke to you a while back when you had
Yes, some time
Surge of
ago.
Power, Revenge of the Sequel, and now here we are again. You were on a Tri-City tour doing screenings of Surge of Power, Where There's Smoke. How's that going so far?
It's going amazing. So we had our world premiere at Tarzana International Film Festival in August, which happens to be 20 years to the weekend of the world premiere of the very first Surge of Power film. So that's how we kicked off was August in Tarzana out here in California. And then we've been playing at film festivals and comic conventions. And this Friday have a sci-fi convention that played the first movie 20 years ago, who's having us come back for our latest.
Yet, how does that feel having this franchise that you've been building up? You have this universe of characters very well known. I mean, when you watch these films, you're just excited to see familiar faces as an audience member, and they keep coming back and they keep coming into the universe. So, how has that been for you to shepherd this project all those decades?
I'm loving it. I'm really glad with where things are. It's very nice for those actors who come back and return and are playing recurring roles. And with Revenge of the Sequel, you saw that we were starting to build out the Surge of Power universe. The first movie was, of course, like just the origin story. So it was a smaller group. We're just getting started. And so, from Revenge of the Sequel, we then further built out the universe. We did a short film called our Doctor Who tribute, which had a whole bunch of Doctor Who actors. Something kind of more specific to celebrate Doctor Who. Still linked to the Surge of Power universe. A few of the stars came back for little cameos to link it to the larger, Surge of Power storyline. Then there was Surge of Dawn, which was a crossover between the Surge of Power world and a colleague of mine out of New York, Alex Fernandez, who has a number of his own projects, mostly web series and short films, and this magical vampire named Dawn, who he's had a couple of web series and comic books. And so hence Surge of Power meeting Dawn, we called that Surge of Dawn. And then Where There's Smoke is the latest feature, and it really is where like a full team is coming together. And as you mentioned, a number of returning characters. So Nichelle Nichols has been playing a character named Omen in our movies for 20 years now. And even though her health was failing, we were very fortunate to shoot with her before she passed away. And we have enough footage of Nichelle that she'll actually be in one more adventure after this. But this movie has a really nice tribute and send up for Nichelle in the movie. So, and she's in every Surge of Power movie. And in our sequel, we introduced a few characters. So Michael Gray, who's from the Shazam TV show, he played Billy Batson. And in our movie, he starts off as looking like a mild-mannered reporter, but he over time is revealed to be friends with Omen and the Shell's character, and he shows superpowers for the first time in Where There's Smoke. And in the next movie, he actually gets a costume. His costume is being worked on now.
There are so many Star Trek, cast members. You have Robert Picardo, you have Tim Russ. I mean, you have these people that you're like, oh wow.
Yeah. Oh, well, good. I'm glad you're allowing it. Yeah. So Robert Picardo came in during the sequel to share the Omen role with Nichelle because of her health. It was just too difficult to try and like get her downtown LA and out on the streets and fighting. So he was kind of the more action Omen. One of her abilities that she reveals is shape shifting. So it was easy to have another actor, kind of step in. So it's kind of a convenient, technique too.
you have these returning characters, but you also have like a brand new, like you're saying, th this team is coming together, but a new crossover, if you will, a new introduction into the universe, which is the Smoke,
Oh
played by
yeah.
Eric Moran. That was exciting for me. I'll just tell you because I go to RetroCon every year out in Oaks, Pennsylvania, and I travel across the country. It's a great event. And Eric is always there doing the cosplay contests. I've seen
Yeah.
just his outfits are out of this world amazing. So when I saw that he was going to be a part of this, I was just doubly excited. How did you get together and have him become a part of the Surge of Power universe?
I met him when Revenge of the Sequel was playing. We did East Coast and West Coast premiere the same weekend. So we premiered at Burbank International Film Festival on the West Coast, and then the next day I flew to the East Coast and a small sci-fi convention in Florida. And Eric had gone down for that. And some colleagues had introduced him to me, and I had heard about his character, the Smoke. Um, uh, we had we had talked ahead of time because I was looking for other independent characters to come and cross over. And so he actually has a short little 10-second cameo at the end of Revenge of the Sequel. So I'd already knew him, but met him for the first time when I went to this Florida comic convention. And this over time, as we were playing Revenge of the Sequel, and as we were working on Surge of Dawn, I talked with him about his character, the Smoke. So, as you know, from his professional wrestling days, he went by the moniker the Smoke, but he kept that. And in the sci-fi realm, colleagues of his made him a comic book character called the Smoke. And he had a couple of different incarnations. We kind of settled in on this kind of gun-toting vigilante who does kind of like a Punisher kind of character, but also has the ability to turn into gas, hence smoke, the Smoke, right? And I talked with him about him crossing over. So where there's smoke is, essentially us continuing to build our indie hero verse, um, and just linking up our world with other independent creator worlds just to make a bigger universe, you know. Because in the independent world, we're the small fries compared to, Marvel and DC, right? And this was really exciting for Eric because he's been in comic book form, but this is his first time stepping out in live action as his character. Now, he's been acting, as you know, from his professional wrestling days when he kind of finished up with wrestling. He went into acting. So he's been acting, but this is his first time stepping out in live action as this incarnation of his Smoke character.
Yeah, so it's just very exciting to see you guys together working that way. Like you say, building out a larger universe in general. The other thing that always amazes me with these films is just each installment, the special effects get better. Like I remember last time being wowed when the car transforms, like, and you have a robot character, and I saw in the trailer that that character is coming back as well. So how do you feel about that evolution and that ability to what you could do now, all these years later?
Oh, it is something else. 20 years, it is quite a change. The first movie was shot on film, 35 millimeter film, The Surge of Power, The Stuff of Heroes. And the visual effects were limited. They were very nice for that time, but used very judiciously. So Surge doesn't blast a lot, he doesn't fly a lot, but enough so that people can see the powers in action. But it was a big process, and not just the digital work, but because it was shot on film. So then there's a reprocessing of the film negative multiple times to get the visual effects, cut into the film. But nowadays, by the time we got to Revenge of the Sequel, it was all digital. So we've been digital ever since. That was really pushed by George Lucas, right? The prequel trilogy of Star Wars really kind of forced the industry to all go digital. Um, but we've had some visual effects designers with us since Revenge of the Sequel. So for getting close to, like, some of them have been with us close to 15 years now, and their skills have evolved over the years. So not only has have techniques and software developed, so getting the same visual effects done is cheaper these days, but also too their abilities and their skills, their design work has gotten better and better.
That's great. Yeah, it's wonderful to see, just because again, you say, we're the small fries compared to the MCU and those big movies, but it's very fun, everything that you're putting on the screen. So, last question I just have is, so obviously like when Surge of Power is first coming out, it's the first out gay superhero, and that is a big appeal. And the question I have is that as big a part do you feel in the character now, or is it more just established in general? Surge of Power is Surge of Power. You don't have to have that label on it.
Well, it's so when I did the first film, comedy was one thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of bring back comedy to the superhero genre. And then Marvel comes along with Deadpool, and several years later, DC comes along with the Shazam movies, trying to get into the action. But at least I'm still running with cinema's first out gay superhero, so no one can beat me on that.
Mhm.
But that was something that I felt was lacking and that I wanted that representation. But it's not like the central theme of the character or the movies. Like it's there and it's part of the character. And I do try and do things that show that I'm honoring, the representation. But it's not like it's like that's what the movie is about. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
it's not a movie about a gay superhero. It's a movie about superheroes, and one character happens to be gay and it's not in your face about it, but just kind of there and is open about it. Does that make sense? It's just kind of there
absolutely.
as
Yeah,
part of
it's a
the character.
superhero adventure. That's just an element of it that exists.
Yeah.
And so I just am curious now. You're teasing us that there's going to be a fourth, full length film. Is there a timeline on that? Is that something to look forward to in the next 2 or 3 years, or how does that work for you?
Yeah. So, so the next adventure will be kind of like our Surge end game. And it'll wrap up. Well, even with Where There's Smoke, we've been kind of like building on, building on themes and, building out our universe and bringing these characters together to the point where we get to, a whole team. And on the villain side, we start to learn about the villains in Revenge of the Sequel, that there's this whole community of villains. And as we've developed that, that is kind of like, you know, it's there in, kind of front and center to some extent with Surge of Dawn and in Where There's Smoke, but you know that there's something bigger going on, and it's that bigger theme that needs to be wrapped up and dealt with, right? Um, so just kind of like when you watch web series these days, right? It might be like a 10 episode thing, and each episode has its own story, but there's an overarching theme that they have to wrap up by the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm headed with the next adventure. And Surge of Dawn and Where There's Smoke are done to like link up to them. So like Surge of Dawn, I think of it as kind of like Act One, and Where There's Smoke, I think of as like Act Two, and it picks up immediately after Surge of Dawn, like just like hours later. And so the next adventure will link up. It'll be able to play like its own movie, just like Surge of Dawn and Where There's Smoke, but it's really going to be meant to connect to and wrap around Surge of Dawn and Where There's Smoke, and be one larger feature film called Call of the Champions.
Vince, thank you so much for your time and best of luck with the next installment.
Oh, thank you. And we're still working on film festivals for Where There's Smoke. And we've been winning a lot of awards too. In fact, another award just came in today. So I've got 5 awards now so far for the movie. And yeah, one of them being Best Visual Effects. So we're really excited about that. So we're going to continue screening. So if folk don't make it to these next two upcoming, they can just pay attention to our website surgeofpower.org. And as we get new screenings, for Where There's Smoke, we'll be putting them up on our website.
Well, excellent. We hope everyone seeks it out. Talk